I need to recognize that all things are messages that I am already unaware of, that I am playing out in my mind, and I will get the messengers back based on that. And if I want peace in the world, then I better not be focusing on how we need to be better than, let's say, Russia or China as a nation. I need to focus on how is it possible that if peace is in me, I will get the reflections of peace. I will begin to even see them across the movie screen, because it's all my movie screen. All of it's my movie screen. I need to be aware of the messages that are coming in, and the ones that seem to all of a sudden change the storyline. Various players come into play, different political players come into play, and you go, wow, that's a strange thing that just happened. And you go, was it because you and I are doing the Course in Miracles that we begin to see some different players on the screen that maybe are going to play different roles than we thought? You know, I'm suddenly remembering the Total Recall movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he doesn't remember that he laid out the entire scene of how he wanted to, quote, save the world. It happened to be on Mars. But he was going to save all the people on Mars. Mm-hmm. And in the end, he saves all the people on Mars. But as we went through the story and everything else, you actually think that he never went. He
never went anywhere. He's still in a chair someplace.
He's still in the chair. This is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Today's reading is from chapter 19, section 4, the obstacles to peace, and we're reading the second obstacle to peace, which is the belief the body is valuable for what it offers. We said that peace must first surmount the obstacle of your desire to get rid of it. Where the attraction of guilt holds sway, peace is not wanted. The second obstacle that peace must flow across, and closely related to the first, is the belief that the body is valuable for what it offers. For here is the attraction of guilt made manifest in the body and seen in it. This is the value that you think peace would rob you of. This is what you believe that it would dispossess and leave you homeless. And it is this for which you would deny a home to peace. This sacrifice you feel to be too great to make, too much to ask of you. It is a sacrifice. Is it a sacrifice or a release? What has the body really given you that justifies your strange belief in it lies salvation? Do you not see that this is the belief in death? Here is the focus on the perception of atonement as murder. Here is the source of the idea that love is fear.
Before we started, I was thinking about why even do this? I mean, at all. Why do any of this? And
the Course in Miracles at all?
Well, I mean, just this process of combing through the chapters and all this stuff. And
okay.
And the reason is because you can easily get into this and enter into a mind-dead space of just, hearing this coarse language and letting it bounce around in your brain like like colored ping pong balls in a spherical room or something, and they're just bouncing and bouncing. Is it to really dial in, and maybe everybody does this, but I know I have to refresh myself on it sometimes. This is a radically different way of seeing the world, and beyond even being different, it's not. I thought about this. It's not even different like a dog is different than a cat, or a man is different than a woman, or even being is different than non-being. It's no kind of dual language. It's different like a particle and a particle accelerator. It's very different. So if you watch that scene in The Watchmen where Dr. Manhattan, at that time he's a scientist, and he gets trapped in a particle accelerator. Well, it blows him to bits.
And reassembles.
This is what the ego is afraid of.
Right.
This is why we want to get rid of peace. This is why there's an attraction to guilt. It's our way of holding on to the ground. We're afraid we're going to be blown to bits by this particle accelerator of this other way of thinking. It's cosmic. It's expansive. It links us with people and things and places, pasts and futures. And within that whole tumble of possibilities that seem way, way beyond anything that the senses can give, you're going, wow, where am I? And you're afraid that you're Dr. Manhattan, blown to absolute smithereens in the particle accelerator.
Right.
So this is why we're going through this, is because we have to reassure ourselves, as the Course says in other places. It's not here to obliterate or annihilate the body. It's not here to obliterate or annihilate the ego. There's nothing in the Course that is an attack on anything in your life, per se.
Right. The ego perceives it as an attack.
This is... Yeah.
But it is not an attack. It is literally a complete shift. And I would say, in a way, it feels like a dimensional shift in perception, so that you no longer... The attraction to all of the things of this world that have to do with my judgments on what is right and wrong and good and evil and all those kinds of things. It's to say, first of all, I cannot judge, and then say the body is a useful tool for communication. And really that's basically it. In order to awaken, it's really a useful tool to awaken from the dream into the true reality.
Again, I go through this all the
I
time.
know, every time I talk.
No, I know, I apologize. But it can easily be self-referential, where I start to say, yes, the body is a useful tool for communication, but aside from that, it's the seat of fear or whatever, or I interpret what it is and all. Yes, you can throw the Course in Miracles at it, but even as I'm speaking, and even as I live and breathe and exist on a moment-to-moment basis, the Course in Miracles is asking me to wake up from the way I'm living moment to moment to moment. It's that radically different, so that I'm, you literally are in the world but not of it.
Yes.
Very literally.
Yes, I agree.
And so here it says, the attraction of guilt made manifest in the body and seen in it. The body is valuable for what it offers. We just spoke about that. The body is a sort of a necessary currency. I guess, what do they call it? The lingua franca or whatever. It's the necessary currency for the ego and for guilt. The body is a critical piece in that. In fact, it was all, as a very coherent thought system, the egoic thought system. Guilt, the body, and the egoic strategy for existing in this world, this is what we know of as my life, our life. That's what we know as our life. And the Course is challenging that and saying, okay, do you notice that at the level of the body, what do we have going? At the level of guilt, what do we have going at the level of the ego? And it's saying, it's all holding you back. At the level of the ego, the body isn't healthy, but you constantly try to make it healthy. The ego will not give you full information, and yet it says it's the source of all information. And then guilt is built out of partial half truths. The Course is saying, take it all the way out to the Son of God. Take it all the way out to what God's creation actually is, and quit living in this partial deal. But the body is so valuable, as it says here, the body is so valuable because it's by design and nature
Right.
limited.
We live in a very relative world, and
Yeah,
God's
right.
world is absolute. So relativity, and you see how changeable relativity is. I mean, it's what it's about. It's relative to this or that, and we change our minds on what is good in this instance versus what is bad in that instance. I mean, it could be the same instance and the same sort of scenario, but because of who said it or because of whatever, that's so wrong or whatever it is. And we change our minds about these relative judgments all the time. So there's nothing we can really hang our hat on. We seem to think so. We can get very, very self-righteous and justified in the way we perform in our lives and everything else. But the fact is that if we really look at it, or even look at how I speak to one person versus another person, and I actually have, based on my relationship there, I would say one thing to them and it would mean something entirely different to somebody else. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
it just
absolutely.
changes, constantly changes as to how we perceive things. And I can get annoyed by someone's tone of voice about one thing, and then if it's a different person says the same thing, and I suddenly it rolls off my back.
Our skill at shifting gears and tolerating those differences that's considered wise living.
Right.
It's not considered a flaw by any sense in the ego's thought system.
Right.
But I went into this sort of a shadowy or somewhat dark, reflective space after the trip to Minneapolis and these different things, and it has to do with reality check on life and all this. And how it relates to this is I'm coming to an awareness of how I've lived my whole life, putting all my chips on my body, putting all my chips on my ability to deliver. Like I'm in a poker game or something, like I'm in Vegas, and I push all my chips on the body and what it can do, like that. And to realize it's absolutely a losing proposition. Sometime, someplace, at given any given day, it's all going to fail. Yeah, sure, you're going to have some victories along the way. There's no doubt about that. But in the end, you're always set up for it to collapse. And the Course is saying, why satisfy yourself with that? Don't just set yourself up to collapse. Well, because that other system is the particle accelerator. And it blows that whole system out of the water. And
Right.
that's a very, very different way of seeing the world. So
It is.
should I go ahead and read?
Yes. Go ahead and read.
Paragraph 3. The Holy Spirit's messengers are sent far beyond the body, calling the mind to join in holy communion and be at peace. Such is the message that I gave them for you. It is only the messengers of fear that see the body, for they look for what can suffer. Is it a sacrifice to be removed from what can suffer? The Holy Spirit does not demand you sacrifice the hope of the body's pleasure. It has no hope of pleasure, but neither can it bring you fear of pain. Pain is the only sacrifice the Holy Spirit asks, and this He would remove. Peace is extended from you only to the eternal, and it reaches out from the eternal in you. It flows across all else. The second obstacle is no more solid than the first, for you want neither to get rid of peace nor limit it. What are these obstacles that you would interpose between peace and its going forth but barriers you place between your will and its accomplishment? You want communion, not the feast of fear. You want salvation, not the pain of guilt. And you want your Father, not a little mound of clay to be your home. In your holy relationship is your Father's Son. He has not lost communion with him, nor with himself. When you agreed to join your brother, you acknowledged this is so. This has no cost, but it has release from cost. So what does all this look like is, again and again, the simple but profound decision, moment to moment to moment, to partner with the Holy Spirit, partner with that other side, to recognize that I'm not me. This ego thing is not the body, and the ego complex is not the center of this life.
Right.
The center of this life is determined by the Holy Spirit, and that's all we have to do is throw our attention toward the center maker, in a sense. Throw my attention, and that center can shift based on the changing conditions of this life.
Right.
Now, this life that I have, you, this house, this lamp, this camera, this YouTube channel, this whatever it is, this Buddha statue back there, all of these are pieces of the millions and millions of components that I feel like I'm the center of. They're all like swirling around me. But the true center in the Holy Spirit can manifest at any given point.
Yeah, and it's I was just had a thought about the Holy Spirit. As we allow it to be our guide, there's a sense that it wants us to be content, and we're not going to be content until we want to have Him as our guide, and notice the subtle ways in which different people show up in our lives once you want it to be a guide, and how you react in those situations, or even in your partnerships, how you recognize your old patterns that you've carried with you for so long, and why are you using that as the pattern that is not a loving pattern with your partner. Things like that come up, and you just go, I do want to see it another way. And only with the Holy Spirit can that the messengers of fear that see the body, for they look for what can suffer. The body is, the messengers for the body are only going to look for what can suffer. So when you finally recognize that that's what I'm letting be my messengers, suffering and pain.
But
it's like it seeks it out almost.
Right, but really, truly, if I'm just like I'm a newbie and I haven't really studied this, I go, what do you mean to look for suffering? I don't look for suffering. I got to take more aspirin than Carter has little liver pills. I take a bunch of aspirin, let's say, to alleviate that kind of suffering. I'm going to a shrink 3 times a week to alleviate that suffering. I don't want suffering. What are you talking about? How is it you're saying I'm looking for witnesses in suffering?
Well, the witnesses in suffering means that everything that I witness in my life, if I am paying attention, I am judging each moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. I'm judging it as beautiful, ugly, smelly, beautiful aroma. I'm judging it in subtle ways. Oh, and that person is way too fat, or they're going to really hurt themselves if they keep climbing that jungle gym like that.
What do you use for the criteria for judging those experiences? What do you use for the criteria?
I'm using all of my senses. I'm using, all of what this body has given me as my sensate judger. All the things that come into my nervous system that allow me to pick and choose and categorize and all that kind of stuff. And in that, I don't realize that I'm keeping myself from knowing what is really in front of me. I'm keeping myself from a knowledge that is all pervasive in all things. And so there's a form of suffering in that I'll always feel somewhat alone, somewhat incomplete. I'll always feel like if I just do this, if I just do that, or if that person would just do whatever it is that I think I need, I won't suffer anymore. If my boss would just be nicer to me, why does he always have to pick on me? Whatever it is that is an attitude rub is the thing that I'm suffering with. I'm suffering when I have an attitude with what I see on the news, and I think that I know how this thing is supposed to be happening. All of those are, people don't think that they're suffering. We're just having, quote, opinions.
Well, and this is that's the radical difference between these two thought systems. The radical difference is, if I'm using the senses like you're talking about, I'm using those senses to determine the things I should get rid of or change in my life through, grievances and judgments and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And that's my action plan. I let my senses drive me to do certain
Right.
behaviors. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
driven by the senses. Now, the Course is actually asking for a reversal of that and to say that from sources beyond my comprehension, my salvation is coming at me from the world. You know, from the phenomena that are coming at me are all possible holy instants. They're all an ongoing holy instant.
And it's completely in you too, and available for awakening even within. So the within,
but
and
it's not possible with those senses.
no, it's not.
The senses make it impossible
Right.
to receive that, so that you have to take all those senses and put them on a shelf and say, all right, well, I'm perceiving this smell, this sight, this judgment, but I'm going to say that there is this other presence. Okay, and what is that presence? It's the presence that, it's, for me, the first time I ever really thought about is what is digesting what turns a hamburger into hair and fingernails? What is that? Now you can say it's some biochemical thing. No, because the dead body isn't doing that. There's something that we call life force or whatever, and that's just a small fragment of an intelligence that far outstrips our real ability to understand it. And we have to dive deeply, deeply, deeply into the ego's thought system to exclude all of those amazing phenomena.
Right.
And we have to pretend that the solution in the ego's thought system is always around the corner. It's we're going to figure it out, we're going to figure it out, we're going to figure it out. So a billion years from now, I'm going to figure out how I turn a hamburger into hair and fingernails.
Right. Yeah, and the ego loves to dissect. I mean, as far as like science is concerned, that's all we do is we think that we can find the truth by just taking it apart into smaller and smaller pieces until we just at the micro level. Oh, look how a calcium ion is going across the barrier there, and it's making the heart do this one thing, and look at how the salt does the other. It's
by noticing it, we sort of think we're owning it.
Yeah.
I counted it, therefore it's mine. It's like in The Little Prince where the guy's counting stars.
And
why
yet,
does he count them? So he owns them.
No matter how much you know about all of that, it doesn't explain why I can just speak and talk to you without having to pre-think what I'm thinking. That's just, woo, and it just goes.
No, that's a mind blower.
I don't know how that works.
Total mind blower.
Yeah. The peace is actually flowing. It is the core. It is a core attribute of God and the all-pervasive all itself. It's always there and it's always available, but I don't recognize the obstacles that I've placed so that I'm not experiencing what is already here.
And the reason you don't recognize those obstacles is because we call that our daily life.
Yeah.
It's everything.
And it calls, that's good thinking.
Yeah.
Got that one figured out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, paragraph 5. You have paid very dearly for your illusions, and nothing you have paid for brought you peace. Are you not glad that heaven cannot be sacrificed, and sacrifice cannot be asked of you? There is no obstacle that you can place before our union, for in our holy relationship, I am there already. We will surmount all obstacles together, for we stand within the gates and not outside. How easily the gates are opened from within to let peace through to bless the tired world. Can it be difficult for us to walk past barriers together when you have joined the limitless? The end of guilt is in your hands to give. Would you stop now to look for guilt in your brother? Let me but be to you the symbol of the end of guilt, and look upon your brother as you would look on me. Forgive me all the sins you think the Son of God committed, and in the light of your forgiveness he will remember who he is and forget what never was. I ask for your forgiveness, for if you are guilty, so must I be. But if I surmounted guilt and overcame the world, you were with me. Would you see in me the symbol of guilt or of the end of guilt, remembering that what I signify to you, you see within yourself?
So the figure of the author of this, or the speaker, is allowing himself to be a symbol of the end of guilt. And
Yeah, I just like to call it Jesus because it helps
well,
me.
I know.
But I don't
I'm
know
just
what
saying
else.
the author because he doesn't say I'm Jesus and I went
Right.
through this stuff. But we do have the biblical testament that this is all springing out of in terms of its language and vocabulary. So Jesus is saying that let me symbolize the end of guilt, which gives us an anchor. So I don't have a vague picture of just a bunch of people or places or whatever the sonship is or whatever this metaphysical dynamic is. I can anchor it all on Jesus and say, what did he do wrong? Okay, if I have that sense, let's say I've got Jesus meek and mild and he's feeding the lambs and he's got some kids on his knee and all those kinds of classic pictures of Jesus, and I want to blame him for stuff. And he's saying, I am the stand-in not only for the end of guilt, but I'm the stand-in for guilt as well. Okay, and we make our choice. We choose whether we crucify him or whether
Right.
it's the resurrection. And the resurrection.
And if we continue to crucify him or say that he's still forever on the cross, and he never resurrected, then that's the way we perceive ourselves. That's the way is that we will always be, crucified here, and there is no resurrection.
Well, he's giving me a symbol, an anchor for my attention, which is him.
Yes.
He's giving, and that's, I'd say, one of the valuable things about these two paragraphs. Can it be difficult for us to walk past barriers together when you have joined the limitless? Jesus, having identified himself with the limitless, having identified himself with the Father, having identified himself, and yet he seems to be embodied. He seems to have the brown beard and the hair and the robe and all that kind of stuff. And he goes through stuff and he does stuff. So I have a symbolic anchor that I can use to do this process.
Extrapolating out, it would be that if Jesus is a symbol, then I am a symbol as well. Because everything in this world it actually is symbolic.
And we talked about that,
Yeah.
everything being a symbol.
Right.
God is a symbol.
Yeah, God as we perceive him is a symbol. God as we know
No,
him.
just to say God,
Yes.
that's
right.
symbolic. God, to say God can't be other than a symbol because our mind thinks in symbols, we run in symbols. It's the ego, it's this limited, guilt-driven kind of a thing that we got going here.
Right.
And Jesus is basically saying, to escape from this guilt cycle, you can lay this stuff on me. Forgive me for all the problems that you think you got here.
Right. And if there's any real work with visualizing Jesus as the crucified God, which you cannot kill God, then it would be that I remove the guilt that I feel that somehow I am responsible for killing God. Because there's a lot, particularly in Catholicism, that makes us feel like we just continue to kill God. For me, I don't know if it's not really quite in the language. It's something more subtle in the teachings there, and there's less emphasis on the resurrected Christ on a person, on a daily basis, which so to me, once he's resurrected, why even think about his death? Because he's alive.
Right.
He's alive.
Well, we saw a documentary on, basically, long story short, Facebook, and the kinds of things that the reviewers of material have to subject themselves to. Horrendous, horrible, beyond comprehension material that these people have to just sit and look at for 8 hours a day, and they get paid minimum wage to look at this horrible material.
That have been posted.
So that's, it's people's postings, and they're trying to decide what's legal and what's not. Okay, well, that's Facebook. It's the underbelly of Facebook. It's the underbelly of social media in general. And my point of saying that is that you can see trying to focus on, let's say, Facebook is difficult, and you don't know. Wow, who do you blame for all this? Well, you got Mark Zuckerberg, and now Mark Zuckerberg has very, very little probably to do with any of it. but he is the face
Right.
of Facebook. And Jesus here is saying, I will be the face for that entire group of people you got to beef with. In other words, the humanity that
Well,
seems...
that's true. That's a good example.
The humanity that seems to make all the mistakes, the humanity that seems to upload crap to Facebook, the humanity that doesn't seem to get it right, the humanity that seems to shaft everybody as many times as they get, I'll own it. I'll take that. I'll be the CEO. I'll be the face of that whole business that you have problems with. Now, can you forgive me?
Right.
Can you forgive me? So you can see what he's asking for. He's not asking you to forget the horrible things you know about the company. He's just saying, can you forgive me? Because in that forgiveness, we shed grace and light through the Holy Spirit onto that system.
Right.
So given that as an example, if I go back to Facebook and Mark
Until the
Zuckerberg,
light shined on the darkness, then
if I allow
the
Mark
darkness is still
Zuckerberg,
there.
if I allow Mark Zuckerberg, instead of saying Mark Zuckerberg is just a shill, or he's just sort of a puppet of some cabal that's behind him, or whatever I want to say, if I just say no, I'm going to let Mark Zuckerberg symbolize what I think is pretty horrendous about social media, especially Facebook. If I just let it symbolize, and then I do this practice, and I do what Jesus suggests, and I see Mark Zuckerberg and Jesus as conflated. I can, because Jesus is saying, let me be Mark Zuckerberg, frankly. That's what he's saying here. And I forgive Mark Zuckerberg this way. I'm bringing light to that situation. That's my goal. That's my life here. That's what the book is saying.
Right.
I'm partnering with the limitless.
Right.
I'm not partnering with the limited. I'm not partnering with the diseased Facebook. I'm partnering with Jesus, and he's saying, lay that whole thing on me. Now forgive me. Okay, let me off the hook. Quit crucifying me, and let's shed light on this.
I agree.
And look for
Yeah.
holy witnesses. And
That's why it
that's
says,
the practice.
come and give me all your burdens, you weary, and
Right.
however those paragraphs go on that section.
Paragraph 7, from your holy relationship, truth proclaims the truth, and love looks on itself. Salvation flows from deep within the home you offered to my Father and to me, and we are there together in the quiet communion in which the Father and the Son are joined. O come, ye faithful, to the holy union of the Father and the Son in you, and keep you not apart from what is offered you in gratitude for keeping peace its home in heaven. Send forth to all the world the joyous message of the end of guilt, and all the world will answer. All the world will answer. Think of your happiness as everyone offers you witness of the end of sin and shows you that its power is gone forever. Where can guilt be when the belief in sin is gone? And where is death when its great advocate is heard no more? Forgive me your illusions, and release me from punishment for what I have not done. So will you learn the freedom that I taught by teaching freedom to your brother, and so releasing me. I am within your holy relationship, yet you would imprison me behind the obstacles you raise to freedom, and bar my way to you. Yet it is not possible to keep away one who is there already, and in him it is possible that our communion, where we are joined already, will be the focus of the new perception that will bring light to all the world contained in you. This is this radical particle acceleration I talked about in the front end. It's not that tame of an idea.
No.
This is a total turnaround of the normal way of judging, assessing, and acting.
Right. And in fact, as the Course says, you need do nothing. And that means you need not judge. Because I think that that's a key thing, is to recognize, for myself right now, is to recognize all the judgments I am having from moment to moment, and deciding that I don't really know what anything is for. It's one of the first things in doing the workbook and everything else. But if I recognize it from moment to moment, and I start to let it just not land, I suppose, or retract my judgment when I have it, and just saying, not now. This is not. I don't really know, you know. And it tends to change, I would say it tends to change the atmosphere for me. It has a different feel when it's not charged with judgment, which allows the Holy Spirit now to give it its interpretation by allowing this other that is already there, the love that's already there, the sonship, that my ability to see a brother as a Christ and all that, it actually has the ability to begin to be able to be, even if it's slight, that I don't, it feels actually restful, is what I would say. I call it restful when I'm not constantly judging. I don't know if I'm even talking about this particular section at this time, but it does say, forgive me in paragraph 8, forgive me your illusions and release me from punishment for what I have not done. That could be any person or thing that I think has happened in the history of everything. Forgive me those illusions that I believe all of this has happened and that it's atrocious, or it requires fixing, or whatever I believe about it, because the journey truly has already been done. But I cannot see that the journey's been done, and I cannot see through the veil of all the things that are the suffering and pain and everything else that I continue to focus on, because it's easy to focus on the things that frighten me, and not as easy to focus on the things that are really just maybe even non-judgmental. Instead, those other things pop up, like little gophers out of the ground. It's like, oh, look at that one. Look at that one. It's when you drive by an accident and you just can't help yourself from looking and then judging what you think happened. We constantly are in that world. But Jesus is saying, forgive me those illusions and release me from punishment of what I have not done. So will you learn the freedom that I taught by teaching freedom to your brother and so releasing me. And that, to me, is the holy relationship, because now I am inviting in the Holy Spirit to reinterpret it, which means I allow for that holy relationship. Me with the whole of the sonship, me with Jesus, and me with my brothers, who I see as individuals along the path.
I can always go into faith. Faith is required to have the miracle. It's true.
Right.
But the miracle is not always available to me in my sort of gray days, where things are just marching forward. And this is saying, in terms of faith versus faithlessness, as that way of being in the world, to notice that most of my life, and you got to peel your fingers off that revolver very, very slowly and gently, but the revolver of choice, that it's up to me to make it happen. It's up to me to worry it away. It's up to me to have anxiety. Mm-hmm. If I don't have anxiety, if I don't have worries, if I don't plunge into this, if I don't fret over what they're up to over there, if I don't do that, then it'll go bad. And the Course is asking me, relax, man. It's happening in another realm. And your fretting and hand-wringing is not helping at all. In fact, you're losing a moment of grace where I could be a vehicle for the real agent.
Right, that is the obstacle.
Of change.
Those are the obstacles.
And so instead of me fretting or worrying or saying those people or that person or that situation, in vigilance for the kingdom, I say to myself, oh, okay, I feel that going up. I'm throwing up defenses and literally the fences. I'm throwing them up. Peace will flow across them, okay? My defenses are not going to stop, as it's saying here, peace from flowing across. However, I will not be able to be a witness or an agent if I'm fretting. I will not be able to see the beauty of the solutions. I will not be able to see the beauty of what's happening in spite of me.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is to drop my sense of agency to the extent I can. And to the extent I cannot, like I painted the garage yesterday. God didn't paint the garage. I painted the garage,
Right.
And to the extent that that I can't drop it. And I say, well, here I am, paint, bucket, where's God, where's Spirit, is that I recognize that I'm at risk of faithlessness here. And I dwell on this faith relationship, even while painting, let's say, to try to stay there, so that I don't just accidentally stumble into faithlessness of saying, well, it's all on me. If I don't paint the garage, it doesn't get done. So therefore, I dwell in faithlessness through that whole task.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. It gets where you start to feel that if I'm not in a place of peace, or I'm just doing my mundane tasks and everything else, and I haven't felt as though I'm working with the presence, it is coming up more and more that I will stop it for moments and say, Holy Spirit, let me see it, whatever I'm doing, so that I am not just doing, but experiencing the presence with me.
Not in your habitual way of handling
Yeah,
the situation.
right.
So let's talk about the attraction of pain.
Okay. The attraction of pain. Paragraph 9. Your little part is but to give the Holy Spirit the whole idea of sacrifice, and to accept the peace he gives instead, without the limits that would hold its extension back, and so would limit your awareness of it. For what he gives must be extended if you would have its limitless power and use it for the Son of God's release. It is not this you would be rid of, and having it, you cannot limit it. If peace is homeless, so are you, and so am I. And he who is our home is homeless with us. Is this your wish? Would you forever be a wanderer in search of peace? Would you invest your hope of peace and happiness in what must fail? Faith in the eternal is always justified, for the eternal is forever kind, infinite in its patience, and wholly loving. It will accept you wholly and give you peace. Yet it can unite only with what already is at peace in you, immortal as itself. The body can bring you neither peace nor turmoil, neither joy nor pain. It is a means and not an end. It has no purpose of itself, but only what is given to it. The body will seem to be whatever is the means for reaching the goal that you assign to it. Only the mind can set a purpose, and only the mind can see the means for its accomplishment and justify its use. Peace and guilt are both conditions of the mind to be attained, and these conditions are the home of the emotion that calls them forth, and therefore is compatible with them. We are choosing all the time, is what it's saying. Am I choosing that guilt feeling? And I'll know by what gets called forth by choosing either peace or the guilt.
Okay, the importance then of peace is to do my part. It's saying that I have a peaceful part within me, let's say. I have my conscious awareness. That conscious awareness can be full of anxiety, fretting. In fact, it tends to be all over the place. It tends to bounce. It tends to go from this to that. It tends to identify problems and judge. There is a peaceful place, and you could actually maybe visualize it as, like the Ramana Maharshi would say, it's the spirit is the size of the thumb, and it's on the right side, or whatever. Whatever visualization you have for your peaceful garden, your place. In fact, the course uses the peaceful garden sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So identify within yourself that place that is unruffled, unsullied, impossible to mess up.
And even just saying, knowing that it is there. God did not place himself outside of ourselves, and would not place it where we cannot find it.
Okay, that peaceful place is necessary for me to hold this existence together.
Right.
So if I feel like there's not a peaceful place, I'm just lying to myself.
Mm-hmm.
The coherence to have fearful thoughts, the coherence to be terrified and neurotic, the coherence, requires that peaceful place. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
We read this, the coherence and the manifestation even of the body, of matter, of a table that is a table now and it's a table in an hour.
You're saying it all rests within the heart of God, which
The
is peace.
stability of the material world, the stability of the biochemical world, the stability of gravity, the stability of the planets, these levels of stability required as the platform for our insanity.
Oh, right.
Okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They require peace.
Uh-huh.
They rest on peace. And that peace is in me,
Right.
or I would fragment
It's
into
all those
bits.
little waves of the little things that fly up from the waves that they say that we think that those are us and everything else, but there's the large ocean is beneath it, and in the meantime,
Well, that's exactly right. And you've known, almost everybody's had the experience of when you're on the surface of the ocean, you're getting thrown everywhere, and all you have to do is drop 2 feet below the surface, and it's suddenly totally still no matter what's going on up there.
right. And if you could hold your breath through the storm, it
Yeah.
would all be well.
So I'm just saying, though, that your little part is to give the Holy Spirit the idea of sacrifice. In other words, we're supposed to tap in to that place that is existent in us. First of all, you have to have faith that it's there. Only with the faith that it's there can you calm yourself down enough to even manifest it or find it.
Right.
And then once you find it, now you're focused into grace. Now you're able to, it says it, I need, don't leave peace homeless.
Yeah, don't leave peace homeless. Yeah. Yeah, and so long as I want to engender or join with fear or join with my pain and suffering, I will leave peace homeless. And, again, there's a constant calling for that partnership with the Holy Spirit. And the only thing that the Holy Spirit wants us to give up as a sacrifice is the idea of pain and suffering. That's what it wants us to give up. Give it up. And it seems like, well, of course I would want to give up pain and suffering. And yet, there we go again. As soon as, I bump my elbow, I'm sure my body's telling me that's going to be a bruise there or whatever it is. And I'm focused on it. It calls out for whatever needs to be done. Put some ice on that thing. Whatever it is that calls out, it's immediate. And so it makes me feel like that is more real than the ocean that I'm setting on.
Right.
That is forming all things in my life.
Fluctuations in the physical field, whether it's out there or in my own body or in my moods, is inevitable. It's the basis of this to be in flux.
Right.
All of it has to be in flux. So the idea of achieving peace or being pain-free or not going with pain, it doesn't have to do with not experiencing pain,
Right.
not having a headache, not having aches and pains, or being totally peaceful all the time. It's pain as an idea.
Right.
And so that when pain is incoming, I see it as communication. That's the purpose of this. I see it as communication more than punishment. A lot of times, as soon as I feel pain, it's like punishment. Oh, there's that headache again. I'm being
Right.
punished again.
Right.
Instead of saying, okay, I've got communication incoming. What on earth, is this communication about?
Exactly.
Okay. Paragraph 11.
Yes.
But think you which it is that is compatible with you. Here is your choice, and it is free, but all that lies in it will come with it, and what you think you are can never be apart from it. The body is the great seeming betrayer of faith. In it lies disillusionment and the seeds of faithlessness, but only if you ask of it what it cannot give. Can your mistake be reasonable grounds for depression and disillusionment, and for the retaliative attack on what you think has failed you? Use not your error as the justification for your faithlessness. You have not sinned, but you have been mistaken in what is faithful, and the correction of your mistake will give you grounds for faith. It is impossible to seek for pleasure through the body and not find pain. It is essential that this relationship be understood, for it is one the ego sees as proof of sin. It is not really punitive at all. It is but the inevitable result of equating yourself with the body, which is the invitation to pain. For it invites fear to enter and become your purpose. The attraction of guilt must enter with it, and whatever fear directs the body to do is therefore painful. It will share the pain of all illusions, and the illusion of pleasure will be the same as pain. It's a little bit of what I was talking about in terms of the aches and pains in your body and how I interpret it, whether I say the body is communication. You know, if I view the body as communication, then I'm immune from the idea that I'm under attack and that I deserve the attack and that it's an ongoing sort of attack on me in terms of pain or depressions or anxieties or whatever is going on. It's a reconfiguring myself as being a witness of what's happening in the body, in the environment. I'm a witness of what's happening in the body, in the environment. Step back, be more of a scientist, and view you're a witness of what's happening around you as intelligible and intelligent communication coming to me. And I'm not a gamer participant inside of it, you know, trying to fend off monsters or get the right weapons to deal with this phenomena or that phenomenon. Realize the real game player is this intelligence called the Holy Spirit. The real game player.
Right. Yeah.
And so I want to use that game player, and I just let myself be the cursor on the screen, you know, and I let myself just be an empty cursor manipulated by the Holy Spirit to deal with the aches and pains and the situations in my life. And the only way you do that is by finding and establishing that peaceful place. Right.
And recognizing when you're blocking it through those various obstacles. So it said the body can neither bring peace nor turmoil, neither joy nor pain. It is a means and not an end. It has no purpose of itself, but only what is given to it. So I need to be aware of what kind of, quote, power I'm giving to the body that it doesn't have. It's a neutral item.
What I've decided it is.
Yeah.
If I decide the body is a pleasure giver, in other words, it can lead me through this. If I'm strong enough, smart enough, well placed enough, I can get some stuff. I will. That's a quest for pain.
Right.
It looks like a quest for pleasure.
Right.
But it is a quest for pain as well. There's no way out of that. And that's what it's talking about here, the attraction of pain in this second obstacle, the belief that the body is valuable for what it offers.
And what you just said was in paragraph 12, it is impossible to seek for pleasure through the body and not find pain. And so that needs to be understood. And I think that many times we don't understand it. We just, when we're getting what we want out of our efforts and what the body is capable of doing, whether or not you're competing in sports or even your self-competition, when you're getting stronger or working out at a gym and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, hey, look at, this body's really doing stuff, No, you put it to work and it did whatever, and we gave it the means and all the value that we wanted upon it.
A long time ago, I used the example of typing class. It pops up into my head. In typing class, you have two modes. One is hunt and peck, look at the keys, and you can type, first day of typing class, you can type 30, 35 words a minute, hunt and peck, and just going at it this way. The first day of typing class, if you do what they say, which is to look at your source material and type like this, you're typing 2 words a minute or something like that, with a million mistakes. So it's obvious at that level, if you judge, and I'm going to say that looking over this, that the classic way of learning typing is the equivalence of relying on the Holy Spirit. You're allowing another sense to type for you. You're not using your eyes and your finger coordination.
Right.
You're using something else. And when you use that something else, you can get up to 100 words a minute.
Right.
You'll never, ever even get to 50 words a minute hunting and pecking. You can't get there. And so what the Course is saying in a way is, as long as I keep relying on myself in all of these things, that it brings in fear, if I'm going to use the body to accomplish things, I will always accomplish a tiny fraction of a mixed bag of results, as opposed to understanding myself as an empty vessel for life to flow through me in these environments in which I'm intelligently placed.
Right. I agree. I agree on that one. All right. Paragraph 13. Is not this inevitable? Under fear's orders, the body will pursue guilt, serving its master, whose attraction to guilt maintains the whole illusion of its existence. This, then, is the attraction of pain. Ruled by this perception, the body becomes the servant of pain, seeking it dutifully and obeying the idea that pain is pleasure. It is this idea that underlies all of the ego's heavy investment in the body, and it is this insane relationship that it keeps hidden and yet feeds upon. To you, it teaches that the body's pleasure is happiness, yet to itself it whispers, it is death. Why should the body be anything to you? Certainly, what it is made of is not precious, and just as certainly, it has no feeling. It transmits to you the feelings that you want. Like any communication medium, the body receives and sends the messages that it is given. It has no feeling for them. All of the feeling with which they are invested is given by the sender and the receiver. The ego and the Holy Spirit both recognize this, and both also recognize that here the sender and the receiver are the same. The Holy Spirit tells you this with joy. The ego hides it, for it would keep you unaware of it. Who would send messages of hatred and attack if he but understood he sends them to himself? Who would accuse, make guilty, and condemn himself?
The body is just empty. It's a thing that perceives. It's a blob of neurons, and it has a big blob of neurons up here that interprets those things. And within me is the ability to side with that as reality, or within me is the ability to side with that as phenomenon. And reality is that I'm spirit. Reality is that I'm here to partner with spirit. I'm here to understand spirit. I'm here and to not listen to the voices that say, yes, Mr. La La Land, all that spiritual talk is going to get you nowhere. You're never going to be Superman unless you work really, really hard. And so the idea about really applying myself to this life and trying hard and struggling and blood, sweat, and tears. The blood, sweat, and tears of this life is equated as the pleasure of life. Blood, sweat, and tears. Right. That's how it says we equate pleasure and pain.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And recognizing that the sender and the receiver are the same, that's with everything. You know, if I'm getting a blast of, somebody calling me names or whatever it is, and I feel really offended by it and want to, attack them back, it's all me. And my sensate perception of it, it's not to say, oh, I need to just tolerate being beaten up and everything else. It's more like just recognizing that all things are coming at me through the interior voices that I have already made of myself. Like, for instance, my past relationship, before I met you and everything else, all of those voices of myself believing that I'm not good enough and everything else, they were already there prior to my relationship with him. And he just amplified them. And I just felt more and more small in his presence. And I just want to blame him. I just want to say he's cruel, he's narcissistic, he's this, that, and the other thing, or whatever it is in my mind. But I need to recognize that could not have happened unless I already took it on as a belief system. Now, when it started within the realms of, the dream and everything else, how I came into the world, my placement in a family and all that kind of stuff, doesn't matter. I need to recognize that all things are messages that I am already unaware of, that I am playing out in my mind. And I will get the messengers back based on that. And if I want peace in the world, then I better not be focusing on how we need to be better than, let's say, Russia or China as a nation. I need to focus on how is it possible that if peace is in me, I will get the reflections of peace. I will begin to even see them across the movie screen, because it's all my movie screen. All of it's my movie screen.
Right.
So to me, it just reinforces that I need to be aware of the messages that are coming in, and the ones that seem to all of a sudden change the storyline. Various players come into play, different political players come into play, and you go, wow, that's a strange thing that just happened. And you go, was it because you and I are doing the Course in Miracles that we begin to see some different players on the screen that maybe are going to play different roles than we thought? There's just so much to it. And if it's all me, I'm suddenly remembering the Total Recall movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he doesn't remember that he laid out the entire scene of how he wanted to, quote, save the world. It happened to be on Mars. But he was going to save all the people on Mars. Mm-hmm. And in the end, he saves all the people on Mars. But as we went through the story and everything else, you actually think that he never went. He
never went anywhere. He's still in a chair someplace.
He's still in the chair.
Right, he's the one that wrote
it out.
But
it seemed like he got out from the chair, and he fought these people that were putting in injections, and he said he didn't want to do it and everything else. I think that's us. I actually think that we volunteered to be in the dream in a particular scenario and everything else. And if we want the dream to change, then we have to change the interior makeup of how we are reacting and playing in this world, or we're not going to see it different. We will get exactly the fear-based thoughts will come back at us again, and we'll end up in World War III, just like we ended up in World War II and everything else. And it will play out those fears. It will just play them out, because we as a collective, or me as an individual, believe that that's where we're going to have to go. I say, don't join with it.
Well, as I'm in the body, it seems responsible, the body as being a perceiver of phenomenon. And now the thing is, the body, and this is true in yoga as well, the yoga disciplines, the senses and the objects of sense, that would be the things, are joined.
Yeah.
I am connected with the objects that I perceive, and I'm just registering what it is I'm seeing. Now there's a complicated caveat in there where the mind can be conditioned to view those things one way or another. One person, might look at chocolate cake and get sick, and another person just goes crazy and says this is heaven. Mm-hmm. It just depends on the person. That's what the Clockwork Orange was about, where the idea was to take Alex in the movie Clockwork Orange and condition him so that all the things that brought him pleasure, that should be Beethoven, sex, and violence, brought him pleasure in his earlier life. They subjected him to this treatment so that he actually was nauseated when he experienced nausea when he saw those things. So that the senses can be, the interpreter of the senses can be changed.
Right.
And so that, so a lot of the time, if I go into it, because I'm sitting there going, some of the senses are pretty clear. You put your hand on a hot stove and you pull it away. There's not a lot of discussion about mm-hmm. whether it's hot or not, or what happens. Well, I'll burn my hand. Then you have the proofs of it. You have the body burned. Right. Well, what about a relationship? I'm in a relationship like what you're talking about, and that's a hot stove, and I want to pull away, but then I go, you know what? I've been in these hot stoves before, and I keep jumping off this hot stove. I'm going to hold on this time until I get through this. Mm-hmm. And you just keep on burning and burning and burning on the hot stove of a bad relationship, or mm-hmm. of anything. It could be job, et cetera, you know the story. So what's the difference? I'm going to say that somehow in there, we have to trust the body as a communication device, and maybe not always trust my interpretation of what I'm getting. So try to create more and more space between me and my interpretation. Let's say you're talking about the relationship, mm-hmm. right? So you go into it, and very, very quickly it revealed itself as a hot stove that you should right. remove your hand from. But you stayed in it, and you retooled your mind mm-hmm. to say this is just the necessary price of pain to stay in this relationship. Right. You stayed in it. How would you suggest, given what the Course is saying here about the neutrality of the body as a communication device, how would you replay that? How would you counsel somebody to play that, where they get in this spiritual relationship and it's suddenly, wow, it's not spiritual at all. This is going to tank me.
Oh,
I can't take it.
It actually is. And the thing of it is that I had asked for it to, in the same way that, had a prayer for a holy relationship. I asked for it in that relationship as well, because we were doing the Course in Miracles as well. But I don't think that I expected it to become more and more loving instead of it to reflect my obstacles to peace.
But the pain kept increasing. At what point why is the hot stove so easy and the relationship is so difficult?
Right. I would say that once I have labeled it as, quote, my spiritual work, this is my spiritual work that I must get through, that I am going to stick it out.
But why did you do that? Why would you do that to yourself?
I thought it was necessary to overcome my egoic tendencies.
And there's proof for that.
Yeah.
There's the infections burn like hell if you dump some alcohol on it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good.
No. So,
purification takes pain,
right.
we say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there is that. Yes, purification takes pain. And the thing of it is that, the Course in Miracles doesn't ask for us to go the painful route. It does say that it could be. Some people only learn through that.
Okay, so how would you replay the relationship thing, knowing what we know here, where it is, I guess what I'm getting around to, what do you think about this idea? That you go towards a relationship and identify that it's painful. Mm-hmm. And you say, this relationship is painful, and don't relabel it as purification or anything. Just say, this may be purification, but it is painful to me now. Mm-hmm. We're in a mindful relationship, so I'm going to stay at arm's length from you, and I'm going to do some self-searching.
Right.
And so that instead of plunging into this, like the hand grabbing the hot stove, I'm going to feel that heat and try to understand what's going on with me with this sense and find out if this is a problem with my senses. Mm-hmm. In other words, is it really purification?
Right. No, I know. I had no, I don't know. Lots of things went wrong with my own ability to judge, to relax, to not, flinch about certain things.
I got an idea. You go into it, this is what this is about, the attraction of pain.
Yeah.
This is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Because, let's say, you spend too much time dancing, and now you want to get into a spiritual relationship, which is the real deal. Mm-hmm. Pain is going to be an indicator that you're doing the work.
Yeah, I would say that was my understanding at the time. Yeah, I would say that was my understanding.
So that could be your success. Like a person that's fasting. Well, I know I'm fasting because I'm starving.
The success ends up being that when I was actually it says you'll be sick as long as you say that you need to be sick. I'll be in pain as long as I feel like I need to be in pain. When I finally said I don't need to be in pain anymore, we ended. It was done. That's all I needed to say. I don't need it. And it was done.
I have been practicing that like I don't need this shoulder pain anymore. Now, right. It doesn't, I've still got shoulder pain. But just as a way of witnessing or distancing myself or making it a point of reflection.
Right.
So that it's not just the thing I carry.
Right. Because one of the statements was to let myself know that I will not gain anything. As long as I think that my sickness will get me something, my shoulder pain will get me something. Maybe it gets you to stop doing as many push-ups or something. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Whatever it is, it actually gets you something that the part of you that you don't maybe recognize that you're saying to yourself is, I don't want to do push-ups anymore. He does a lot of push-ups. So
I don't do that many push-ups.
Yeah, he does. But anyway, and so if that's the case, if you don't recognize that your interior voice is saying that to yourself, then you're gonna have pain.
Right.
Because until you make peace with what you're up to, which
Well,
is,
no, there is a fragmentation between the body and its experience of the world,
yeah.
and the mind and its experience
You know,
of
when
the
a
world.
person, when I know that when I had like a lot of stress in my life, different jobs and everything else, doesn't it inevitable that you get sick?
Yeah.
And you get sick, why? Because you just don't want to do it. And you think, this is my only way out, is to say, I got sick, and so I need to take several days off. You don't really want to be sick. You want several days off. But because you want several days off, and you know in the work environment, it says, oh, I get several days off if I get sick. So the mind knows that, and it gives you your days off. And now you're wishing that you didn't have the flu.
Well,
You know what I mean?
well, okay. Let's say I go into a situation exactly, and let's say I go into a situation with a sort of a defeated attitude, like, okay, I'm going to go into this project and I'm going to prove myself. Now, the reason I want to prove myself going into this project is because I feel small, and I want to overcome the feeling of smallness.
Right.
So I go in to prove myself, and then in the process, I have, let's say, a major victory. I can get frightened by the major victory, and then my next step can be sabotage. And the reason I sabotage it is because I want the familiar pain and the familiarity of being small.
Yes. So anyway, I think what my main point is that I don't think that we understand which still small voice we're listening to, and it tends to be the one that wants to make us little. And so, and that's the egoic voice that we got trained to use from a very young age, and everyone's story is a little bit different. But either using littleness as our form or grandiosity to cover our littleness, it tends to play out in this world. When you realize that that's what you're up to, you can say, I don't need to do it. I just don't need. I don't need to get anything in that. I don't need to get those messengers. I don't need it.
Well, I recently went through a crushing episode of littleness. You know, I'm not going to be specific on it, but it was crushing, devastating. I was reduced to tears, and it was, and I still, I would say, look at it and say, well, there's no proof for that or whatever, and I recognize, no, I was getting witnesses that, yes, Phil, you're not as great as you thought you were, and you know, so, and I was crushed, really crushed. Now, I went through it because we're doing this section and we're moving along in the course, and you know, if you've been along on the ride, I mean, I did the thing in Minneapolis, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera. So this is part of a long process, and I received it as just a message. The crushing sense of littleness. I just received it as a message and just sat with it. Didn't try to change it. Didn't psychologize my way out of it. Didn't blame my way out of it. Didn't even flog myself out of it. You know, like, hey, Phil, you're such a loser. Whatever it was that I felt like I needed to go through. But I went through that, and I'll say that experience stands as a phenomenon. A lot like hitting your finger with a hammer or anything else. It stands as a pain. But I don't feel like it's a heavy weight that I have to fix. You know, I don't feel like there's something, that there's a reality there that needs action.
Right.
And in the past, I would have been burdened by all the actions I need to take to push back that crushing sense of littleness. I don't feel that way. I feel like it's just a crushing sense of littleness, and it is what it is. And now I'm just watching what it tells me, because it's communicating to me, having been in an event in the body.
Right. Which was actually in your mind.
Yeah, the body mind, right.
Yes. Yeah. And the body then gives you those guilty or littleness feelings.
Okay, move along.
Yes.
The ego's messages are always sent away from you in the belief that for your message of attack and guilt will someone other than yourself suffer. And even if you suffer, yet someone else will suffer more. The great deceiver recognizes that this is not so. But as the enemy of peace, it urges you to send out all your messages of hate and free yourself. And to convince yourself this is possible, it bids the body search for pain in attack upon another, calling it pleasure and offering it to you as freedom from attack. Hear not its madness, and believe not the impossible is true. Forget not that the ego has dedicated the body to the goal of sin, and places in it all its faith that this can be accomplished. Its sad disciples chant the body's praise continually in solemn celebration of the ego's rule. Not one but must believe that yielding to the attraction of guilt is the escape from pain. Not one but must regard the body as himself, without which he would die, and yet within which is his death equally inevitable. So these are these contradictions. These, as with all of the things and this is boilerplate for the whole ego guilt complex. You've got ego, guilt, and the body. Ego, guilt. It's like some sort of triumvirate, and so that this complex works together extremely well, and it does. It's an awesome system. It's an awesome system. But the Course is asking us to just lay that system aside and try the alternative, which is a transcendent system.
Yeah. Paragraph 17. It is not given to the ego's disciples to realize that they have dedicated themselves to death. Freedom is offered them, but they have not accepted it, and what is offered must also be received to be truly given. For the Holy Spirit, too, is a communication medium, receiving from the Father and offering his messages unto the Son. Like the ego, the Holy Spirit is both the sender and the receiver, for what is sent through him returns to him, seeking itself along the way and finding what it seeks. So does the ego find the death it seeks, returning it to you. So this is what I call like the boomerang effect or whatever. What I give out into the world is what is going to, it goes around and it actually collects similar things. It goes, and it goes out there and it comes back and it delivers not just what I sent out, but sometimes more than I sent out, depending on whether or not it was something of anger or more, heavy guilt or whatever it is. It collects more of it to say, oh, this is what you must want. So what I give is what I receive. What you sow is what you reap. Sometimes you send out a message of love and you think that it wasn't received. And I'm not even saying that I physically said, oh, I'm sending love to so-and-so. But there's just a sense that you wanted the best for somebody. Maybe you had them in your prayer life or something else. And then there appears to be no result. Well, the thing of it is that I don't know what that is because there is no time space for the Holy Spirit. And when that person has whatever is going on in their life, it changes or something, they receive it. And it's cumulative. So the kinds of prayers, the kind of offerings that we bring to the world, even though they don't seem like they land anywhere, they're just waiting there like little butterflies, just waiting for just that little opening and poof.
Well, the other side of it is that the Course also says that giving and receiving are one in truth. And
yes.
So, I can say I sent love, but I got emptiness back. So I'm just saying, maybe what I sent was emptiness.
Right. Well, it could have been.
And that's why I got emptiness back. Because we're talking about a system that's outside of time and space. It's not time bound.
Right.
So the idea that I did a good gesture and then I'm going to wait to get a result back might
not ever see it in my lifetime.
Well, but it's also a little bit out of the spirit of the Course in Miracles, which says there is no time and space,
right,
and that giving and receiving are one in truth. So that I know that I have given love because I've just received love. In other words, the giving of love is the reception of love.
Right.
And the way that looks is this.
And the reception of love is the
Okay,
giving of
let's
love. Yeah.
let's look at it this way. I'm going to package up a little present for somebody for their birthday, you know, and I'm going to get this thing, and I write a little sensitive note and all this kind of stuff. And I recognize in that doing that I'm setting myself up for failure. Recognize it. You're setting yourself up for rejection. But you do it, and you do it in a good spirit. You know, and you've analyzed you've looked at your motives and all that in the Course in Miracles, and you say, yes, special relationship time. But I'm doing this because this is where I'm at. This is my due diligence. So I do the best that I can, and I put that on the altar to the Holy Spirit. And then I give this gift and let go of it. I let go of it. I let go of it. And I let it be what it is. In the doing, in the making, when it goes to the post office, I feel love.
Right.
Because I partnered with the Holy Spirit in that, recognized the risk of the
When
Holy...
you lose your expectations of what's supposed to come back, it's quite the different story.
No,
at
you
all
get
times.
so that you don't need to get anything back.
Yeah, you
it's
don't.
empty. Then they
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I love that little gift you get," and you can say to yourself, "Of course, because I received love when I sent it."
Right.
Of course. And if they don't get back with you, look, okay, well, so what?
So
I
what?
received
Yourself.
love.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That's a good example. I like it. All right. Well, this is the end of this section. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.